Hello, this is Michael Hexter. Welcome to Politics 2100 here on YouTube. So, this episode I'm calling Dem Establishment's Preference for GOP quote unquote colleagues defrauds Dem voters of their voices, comma, votes. So, this is a general, even though there are events happening in the world, unfortunately, we have heard bad news from the Supreme Court. I'm going to focus on an ongoing theme that has relevance to those developments. Uh, but more generally, this is not about a specific issue, but about the general configuration of the Democratic Party's leadership and how they have their relationship to their base and their relationship to the GOP in Congress. So the basically, in my observation and that of other people on the left, uh, the Democratic establishment seems to hold their GOP colleagues in higher regard than their voters, than the Democratic voters, and they shield the GOP, including Trump, from the full, wrath both of their voters and also of the law too. So literally, they're both not following, I think, the Constitution and the law, and in to protect their relationship with the GOP. And part of this is, as other people have observed, and I think the Dems are fearful of being prosecuted themselves, because currently I'm talking about January 6th, but also other issues. And they want to, they're creating a club of common interest with the GOP leadership, where if you don't prosecute if you don't prosecute me, I won't prosecute you. So in this case, this leads to a defrauding, and this is where I am introducing a frame of fraud into this discussion, which will probably resonate with some people, and certainly people will say, well, of course this is what happens. But I think using the language of fraud and of really of not only just abandonment, but that literally Democrats are misrepresenting themselves. Democratic leaders and politicians are misrepresenting themselves if they get into office and they don't respond to the voters, but they instead respond to their GOP colleagues and also, of course, the donors. So I mean, the hidden binder with between the GOP and the elite and the Democratic Party elite is that they are mostly, both of them, serving the same donors or a very similar set of donors. And the donors, and they have these different roles, which I've discussed here in Politics 2100 as being good cop and bad cop. And so, but the good cops are protecting the bad cops. And while the bad cops, it seems as though they are not really protecting the good cops and they are looking to run the tables, the good cops are still stupidly holding to the game of good cop, bad cop, and trying to uphold that game. And among other things, that that preference for the so I've discussed this, throughout, from the beginning in Politics 2100 about the good cop, bad cop game. But I think the element of fraud is something I haven't really emphasized enough. And some of this comes from even a personal sense. So I voted for progressive Democrats for Congress, Barbara Lee, when I lived in Oakland. And so I have also done activism for other Democrats in other districts that I didn't live in. But I have felt like my voice, my personal vote, was in vain, in part because it went into the speakership of Nancy Pelosi, who then did with that, basically stifled my voice. And now I'm not expecting, the Speaker of the House to exactly reflect my politics, but there was, for instance, if we think about the anger at Trump, and we see that this whole anti-Trump fundraising operation that the Democrats had created, they are now, when in office, and this goes even down to the local level in Manhattan with the district attorney in Manhattan, Alvin Bragg, that they are simply failing to prosecute Trump. And so this whole idea of Trump being this bad guy and so forth and so on, it was simply a fundraising ruse and also a electoral ruse to get people out to vote, and then not doing anything about it. So, and this is showing a preference even for the hideous monster, Donald Trump, rather than for the Democratic voters, okay? And also the Constitution and a whole other, and the rule of law. But the voters, too, were beyond, in this case, the animus that Democratic voters felt against Trump and still do was also based on some sound, legal, certainly surmises or instincts that that Trump was up to no good, and not only surmises, but there was leaking throughout in various press coverages and so forth and so on. It came to light that there was, violations of the emoluments clause, and so many different other so much other wrongdoing that Trump did in his presidency, before his presidency, and it looks like after his presidency as well. And so the lack of commitment to prosecuting that is a form, as I'm saying here, defrauding people and stifling the voices, literally choking off the voices of Democratic voters, okay? And the question then becomes, why do Democratic voters, or one of the questions becomes then, why do Democratic voters assent to this or allow this to happen? Well, some of the reason that they allow it to happen is that they become accustomed to this behavior by the Democratic Party leadership over the last 30 years or so, where that leadership shows its competence or its supposed smarts and political savvy by being wheeler dealers and sort of having a transactional morality, which includes doing transactional things with the Republicans rather than serving the base. And also, that comes beyond that. I mentioned this in an earlier episode when I was talking about how it was about basically the idea that we are millionaire, or we are would-be millionaires. Essentially, this was the Mark Twain, or the quote attributed to Mark Twain. Then there was that we consider ourselves to be guilty in some sense, and not really worthy and not deserving of help and protection by government. And so even though when we go to vote for Democrats and they talk about various quasi-social democratic protections for people and support for people, that we fundamentally don't feel like we're really owed those things, and we're willing to hold these politicians to account. So, and we instead prefer to lionize them and say that they're, these wonderful characters. And the media helps in this. So the media creates this cult of the Democratic leaders, and with some change, they also try to manage them. They try to shape them according to the wishes of the advertisers, of the corporate elite who own the media. and also the advertisers of in that media, and so including the military-industrial complex. So they for instance, gave Joe Biden some big hits in his popularity in the way they talked about the Afghanistan withdrawal, because their pro-war stance is very pronounced, and is very their commitment on the part of a lot of mainstream media is there's a lot of benefits to them in stirring up war in terms of their ratings, and also in terms of the advertisers that are like Lockheed Martin and so forth and so on, that are military contractors. So anyway, I think that people who vote Democratic need to feel more entitled to call out and unelect, and in terms of in primaries, primary leaders who do not reflect the Democratic majority's interest in, for instance, Medicare for all, and also abortion rights, which we're going to come up to big time, and voting rights. And so there's all these issues that the Democratic leadership basically jumps ship on, and when they get into office. And that means that our votes are being taken by them, and they're using them for their benefit. And in the extreme case, for instance, we have Kristen Sinema, who simply does almost the opposite of what her voters want, and she's simply making a career. And unfortunately, in the Senate, she has a 6-year term to sort of make bank for herself by forging all these relationships with corporations, and even with, and also with the GOP, in trying to basically undermine a quasi social democratic or light social democratic agenda, which is threatening to entrench interests in the United States and corporate interests in the United States. So anyway, and so she was able to, and also I contributed to her campaign in 2018, because I wanted to see a Democratic senator in a small amount, but anyway, in Arizona. So in a way, I was, even though it's not my vote, I'm not an Arizona voter, I was defrauded of that by her, and that's not something that should be normalized. And so anyway, so I'm making this framework in the hopes that people will use it in certainly in their thinking and maybe in their activism, to try to hold these leaders to account, because they simply are treating their base as they're taking them for granted, and they're really, or even scolding them for wanting the things that they had campaigned on, and then decided that, oh no, it's not realistic, and it's not realistic, and they also have GOP colleagues, either in a spoken way or an unspoken way, that they are protecting, as well as obviously mega donors that they're protecting. So anyway, so I just wanted to put this out there, and maybe there'll be another formulation of this that's sharper or different, that also might be helpful to you in your political activism. So anyway, so please share your thoughts about it in the comments, and also, if you like the video, please like it, and also please subscribe to Politics 2100 for more videos like this, or on different topics. But anyway, in any case, try to cover lots of different aspects of politics here, and hope to see you in the next video.